All right. If it's Wednesday, it must be the Wednesday edition of the Frank Figliuzzi Show. And you must be here for our guest, Jill Wine-Banks. And look, I could spend all hour talking about her resume, and you'd be like, wait, and there's more? And yes, there is more. And so you know her from MSNBC Now and her successful podcasts like Sisters-in-Law. But man, you don't know enough about her background. I'll just hit some highlights. You know she's the Watergate girl, right? She wrote the book. We're still waiting for the movie. We'll talk about that. But yeah, she was a Watergate prosecutor. Really did some famous questioning and lines of question there. But you know, one thing you may not know: did you know Jill Wine-Banks was the General Counsel of the United States Army, essentially overseeing the largest law firm in the world? Until, of course, now Hegseth has shrunk that. We'll talk about that too, and more about Hegseth. I want to get to the point that everywhere she's gone, corporate media, General Counsel, Motorola, you name it, she's left it better than when she arrived, and in many cases has deliberately left it better for women, particularly at the Pentagon and in the military. And maybe we'll get some time to talk about that. But we've got lots to talk about. Let's go ahead and bring in Jill Wine-Banks.
Hi, Jill. Frank. Hi, that was the nicest introduction I've ever had. Thank you.
Oh my goodness!
Well,
I'm gonna swell your head even more, because if folks looked at my Instagram post, for today, I posted a last minute Instagram post promoting our show today. You know how you can choose music to go with your post?
Yeah.
And I chose the theme from Wonder Woman. So there you go.
Oh, I should have worn my Wonder Woman bracelet. Sorry.
There you go. But you are famously wearing a pin today. Tell us about the pin.
The pin today, and unfortunately, it looks in my video like it's covered up by my name. So I'm going to stand up so that you can see I am wearing a pin. Yeah. And that pin is from the Obama Center, which I am so lucky that I got to see last week. It is one of the most phenomenal, inspiring libraries. And I've been to a couple of presidential libraries. It is inspiring. And unfortunately, Frank, it's also depressing. It's depressing because of what we've lost. Mm-hmm. The Obama Center focuses on we, us, our. It's not I. Only I can do it. This is, every exhibit ends with imagine your impact, and talks about things that you, the viewer, can do. It shows Girl Scouts camping out on the White House lawn. It's just an amazing place. They've thought of every single detail. And I urge anyone who is visiting Chicago or who lives in Chicago to get tickets to see the full display. But if you can't get them, it's worth going to just see the campus, which has gardens and, of course, a basketball court, because as we all know, President Obama loved basketball.
Yeah.
It's really an amazing place. And if you get there early enough, you can get a ticket just to go to the top of the museum to see some of the most spectacular views of Chicago ever, and to see the letters that are spelling out part of his message from a Martin Luther King celebration. And you see the view of Chicago through these letters. It's really an inspiring place to be. So everybody.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that with us. It should be all on our list to see. It's on mine, and it sounds like they thought of everything from others I've spoken to who've seen it, even the building design and the environment and all of that. And it's, you mentioned it's inspiring, and it should be, because it's not only a testament to the past, but it really speaks to what we can have in the future if we want to. We want to, right? And we're going to talk about what kind of things we've lost and need to regain today. So many topics legal to talk to, and I know you spend much of your waking hours dealing with legal topics on your podcasts and all of that, and answering our questions. Let's start with why not Todd Blanche and his pending confirmation. Susan Collins claims that she's voting no for Blanche, but give us your thoughts on the latest with Blanche. how about the promise of no, I double pinky promise. I do the slush fund. What do you say about Blanche's qualifications and senators who've tried to get him to do the right thing and now feel like they're done?
I don't have anything good to say. My mother always said, if you can't say something good, say they have small feet. I don't know why that was, but anyway, he is completely unqualified. He has shown himself to not be a representative of the people. And the Department of Justice is supposed to represent us. When I was at Justice, I loved going to court and was proud to say, on behalf of the people of the United States. And I don't feel that anymore. I feel like they're going there to do whatever will help Donald Trump. And the list of things he has done is so long that would take the whole show to go through. As to your question about the senators, Tillis and Cornyn, who said, well, one, he has to meet with the survivors. Okay, so he met with them in a perfunctory, useless way that was insulting and demeaning. And if you listen to the survivors talk about how that meeting went, they didn't just characterize it that way. They gave examples of how he demeaned them, how he dismissed them, how he ignored what has been going on for years of their asking for this hearing. Yeah. So I really feel like the meeting was useless, but more importantly, this idea that they wanted to get rid of both particularly the 1.776 slush fund, which was to pay off people who violated the law, who were convicted and then pardoned. Bad enough that they got pardoned, but now Donald Trump wants to pay them off so that they will do it again. That's my interpretation anyway. Wants them to do it again. So he writes a useless piece of paper that has no meaning whatsoever. And they say, okay, that's fine. That satisfies me. But the thing that Donald Trump really, really wanted was immunity from paying his taxes that have accumulated to at least $100 million is the lowest amount I have seen. And he wants to be excused from paying it. And that hasn't been taken away at all. No. He's not able to be investigated. Now, that's as of May 19th of this year for any taxes owed up to that date, which means 2 years from now, when a Democrat is elected president and we have a new attorney general, when we have a new House and Congress, there will be investigations for anything from now. But he made $2.2 billion this year and isn't paying taxes on it and can't be investigated or charged taxes or audited. So this is an absurdity. And anybody in Congress who votes for him is voting, that is votes for Blanche, is voting to give immunity from taxes to Donald Trump, who has enriched himself at our expense. I heard today it's at least $1,100 per person in the United States that we are going to pay extra for all of the things he's done. So it's absurd. His deal with Ghislaine Maxwell, going to see her and then moving her to a place she does not belong, which is, as people would say, a club fed, where she has yoga classes and pets animals.
I've been there.
Have you been there? What is it? Tell us about it.
That's a lovely campus. I'd like to have a therapy dog on a grass covered campus and eat in my cell when the guards deliver it at my command. Yeah, it's a nice place.
Pathetic. I mean, and did he ask any questions about Donald Trump's guilt? Anything he asked, she said, "Oh, I never saw him do anything improper." I mean, oh my God. And she also never saw Epstein do anything improper either. So that gives you some standard by which she lives.
So there's even more, that's just disgraceful. You've touched on so many issues with Blanche and also the senators, this whole fabricated game that was played with the survivors is, in my opinion, yet another exploitation and abuse of them. Again, holding out the carrot. We're going to have the meeting. We're helping you. We're going to demand he meet with you. And then he meets with them, and as you said, couldn't have been more condescending, telling them, get to the point,
Yes.
what's your point? And, our point is we've been raped. That's our point, and you have the information. But, voting for Blanche is voting for a continued cover-up of the Epstein case as well.
And let me just mention one other thing that I just was reading yesterday about the suspicious activity reports. And those are partly related to Epstein, but partly related to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump is making mistake after mistake. So he files a lawsuit against a bank.
Capital One.
You hurt me. You hurt me by closing my accounts. And he opened the door for them coming public saying, yeah, we closed it because we had suspicious activity by you. We think you're money laundering. Right. So now a bank has credibly accused him of money laundering, and people are still supporting him. This is, I mean,
I want to. So talk about be careful what you ask for. You might get it. He got it, and more than he asked for. Exactly. But here's a question. So I thought banks were required within 30 days of suspicious transactions to file their SARS, their suspicious activity reports. What do we know, if anything, about why we're only finding this now? What was this dutifully reported to the Treasury Department, and what, if anything, happened with it?
It was not timely reported. And what are the consequences for the banks? It's not just Capital One. It's many, many banks did not report what should have been reported. And I have not researched the answer to that, but I will now that we've talked about it, because it's a good question as to what should happen to the banks who failed to do this. There's a reason why banks are required to do this, is they're the ones who can spot this kind of criminality.
Sure.
And if they had reported Epstein, for example, 100 years ago, then maybe there would have been a lot of survivors who wouldn't be survivors. They wouldn't have been victims. Mm-hmm. And that's why we do it. But I think your point about be careful what you wish for, Donald Trump brings these lawsuits and then discovery happens.
And I'm sure, and by the way, I'm sure his lawyers, who are not that stupid, said, hey, boss.
Sorry.
That's all right. It sounded like a good tune. I'm sure his lawyers said, boss, if we do this, it could be an ugly response regarding money laundering. Let's not do this. And he probably told them to plow ahead anyway.
Well, I don't know. Maybe they didn't, his lawyers may not know that was the case. And maybe he didn't. He just blithely goes along thinking he can get away with anything. Yeah. I mean, this goes back to Richard Nixon, who thought, if I do it, it's not illegal and I can get away with anything. So I'm not going to destroy the tapes because, I'll never have to turn over the tapes. Donald Trump has the same life view as Richard Nixon did. And Richard Nixon got pushed out of office. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump so far has enriched himself instead of getting pushed out of office.
Would you say that since we're getting to Nixon and your experience in that era, would you say one of the defining differences between Trump and Nixon might be shame? That Nixon eventually said, that some things went really bad here that I need to take care of?
I would say there are some very key differences, and that is one of them. He did have a sense of shame, but he also had a sense of reality. And I would say that is what really drove him out, because when the top three Republicans, the minority leader of the House and the Senate, and also Goldwater, who had been the presidential candidate before him, when they came to the White House after hearing one of the tapes that we got right before trial, we got 64 additional tapes. And one of them was absolutely clear evidence of Richard Nixon saying, just use the CIA to stop the FBI from investigating the money. If you don't follow the money, they can't track the money that paid for the burglars to our campaign funds. Otherwise, they'll be able to. So tell them that there's national security involved, even though there isn't. That was enough, because at that time, the Republicans actually paid attention to facts. And they heard it and they said, you're guilty. You will be convicted by the Senate on the charges of impeachment that have already been voted by the committee. It hadn't even gone to the full House yet. And there were more charges that were coming, but 3 had been voted by the committee. And they said, you will be convicted. And Nixon said, oh, I'm sure I have your support, don't I? And Goldwater said, you do not.
And
so
reality and pushback. Yeah.
Bipartisanship. The other big difference is there were only 3 networks and a couple of major newspapers, and they all had the same facts. They did not have alternative facts. They didn't have social media that broadcast inaccurate dis and misinformation. And so as a result, everyone was dealing with one set of facts. And if you have one set of facts, it leads to a conclusion where the poll numbers sank, as they have for Donald Trump, but yet Congress keeps supporting him and defending him and giving him what he wants. Yeah. I don't, going back to your question about Blanche, how can anyone vote for Blanche? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and we've got this thing, that we'll talk generally about accountability perhaps later, but this Treasury Secretary Besant is really unlikely to hold banks accountable, whether it's Capital One or others, for delayed reporting or no reporting when it comes to Trump and his organizations. And Todd Blanche isn't likely to do that either. So we've seen this movie before. We've literally this week seen a federal judge reluctantly erasing the Oath Keepers charges for seditious conspiracy. We've got Sean. We've got a clip, don't we, of Todd Blanche ranting about something. Why don't we play that and come back on the other end?
Yeah, I mean, so you've declined to say whether you Jeanine Pirro's decision to drop that case. What message does it send, though, if President Trump fires a U.S. attorney because she determined there was not sufficient evidence to charge 4 people with a crime?
Did he fire her?
What message would it send us?
Hypothetically, if the president chose to fire a United States attorney, it turns out he's allowed to do that because he's the president of the United States. So I don't. And by the way, if President Trump wanted to fire anybody, right, and within his administration, he understands he has the power to do that. So when he makes a decision about whether to fire a U.S. attorney or anybody else, that's his. As far as any message, what I said earlier, Alex, is true, which is that when you look at the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office's body of work over the past year and a half and where we are in this city compared to where we were, they are doing a phenomenal job. Now, does that mean that every case goes exactly the way that President Trump or I want or U.S. Attorney Pirro wants? I mean, of course not. It doesn't. So I think that what you've seen play out in the press with respect to President Trump and U.S. Attorney Pirro is it's all out there already. But I don't think that changes the fact that her prosecutors, her office, what they've done over the past year to transform this city into a place that we can all now walk around in after sunset is something that's incredible. So I don't think.
All right, I can't take any more, Sean.
Take one more
so, Jill, so that, of course, for those kind of scratching their head, that was about the reflecting pool and dropping the case on the 60-something-year-old former Olympian because there was no evidence that he vandalized the pool. Jill, what do you say about this notion that the U.S. Attorney's Office is doing just fine and we should focus on their wins?
I'm really hard pressed to find very many wins. Let's not forget the sandwich thrower who the grand juries won't even indict because the facts are a tricky thing. Grand juries demand facts. Juries demand facts. And I would say in connection with dropping the 4 cases against people who supposedly hurt the reflecting pool, that staff came to her and said, if you want to bring these cases, you're going to have to go to court because we don't want to be disbarred. And the evidence is that we have a report from the Department of Interior that it was shoddy workmanship that caused this, that no one has been found guilty of touching it in a way that hurt it. And we are not going to get disbarred for lying to the court. Courts no longer give a presumption of regularity to anything the Department of Justice says. There used to be a presumption in favor of what a Justice Department lawyer said.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah.
Lawyers from justice are being reamed by judges throughout the country. The U.S. attorney here in Chicago has issued an apology to the Broadview Six, who he indicted. They were protesting immigration procedures at the Broadview facility in just outside Chicago. And that's not enough. Courts have said you can't keep bringing these frivolous cases. You can't keep bringing cases where the facts are opposite what you're saying. Yeah. And I think Jeanine Pirro should be ashamed that she allowed these cases. She should be proud that she did stop it now and said, we're not going to bring this case. We have the evidence. We were misled by the Department of Interior. They didn't come to us and say this, but it's not Department of Interior's fault. They should have had that. They should have gone after. You investigate first. You don't indict and then investigate. You have to have the proof first. They said, we have video. Okay, if there was video, where is it? We would be seeing it. There's no video.
Or Jill, as Trump calls it, moving pictures.
Yes.
Or moving cameras.
Moving camera.
Do we have Trump saying that?
Now, we have tapes, like moving cameras, right? We have them where people are on the side cutting it with a box knife. So now I'm not saying I was 100% thrilled with the contractor, but the contractor was rushing. We wanted to get it open for July 4th.
Yeah. If heads should roll, it should be Secretary of Interior Doug Burgum.
Yeah.
And allegedly handing a package by, National Park investigators saying that, there were slashes and there was video, and apparently there's not.
There is absolutely not. I never thought there was. And of course, I just want to say, when you say head should roll, you mean he should be fired. You don't mean head should roll.
No, thank you. No, I don't mean to imply violence.
No violence intended.
We're all talking about the possible firing of Jeanine Pirro for ostensibly doing the right thing. And what she allegedly, as recently as today's news reports, did in the Oval Office was say, and Burgum was sitting there, and she allegedly pointed toward Burgum and said, "Look, I got crap for an investigation. That's on you." So yeah. Hey, let's talk about Jack Smith, former special prosecutor Jack Smith, because I have a question here. He has agreed. I'm not sure why, and I want to explore that with you, to testify before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Why? Why should he?
Why should he? Because they will try to make a perjury case when there isn't one, in the same way they have with others when there is clearly no perjury. The stuff with Comey, for example, he answered the questions that were asked. Right. And so it's, there's no perjury. But this is another one of those, as you said, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
Because you asked and he comes, he can now say all the evidence that they had. He can make a public case that will humiliate Donald Trump. He can prove the evidence he had and why cases were dropped had nothing to do with innocence. It had to do with politics. And so I think that they're going to be sorry that they asked. I think he's smart. I mean, we've heard him interviewed now. I think Nicole Wallace did a great interview. Yeah. And I think that they're going to really be sorry. I bet you they aren't going to want it publicized or broadcast. They'll want to do it in secret. And of course, it's never as good if you just read a transcript as opposed to seeing it happen live.
No.
So
here's a question. He said about testifying, he said, yes, he kind of ended a sentence with, assuming I get permission from DOJ.
Right.
Do you think he's going to get permission, or there to say everything he wants to say about what the goods that he had on Trump?
Of course not. I mean, Todd Blanche should not be confirmed, but he is not an idiot. And if I can see the potential consequences of letting him testify, so can Todd Blanche.
Right.
So, yeah. No.
So I guess my concern is, we just saw Dr. Fauci, who rightfully feared prosecution for perjury or contempt. and said and pled the fifth, every single question. It would be bad if Jack Smith were to plead the fifth on every single question, and it would be also not optimal if DOJ told them, "Hey, Mr. Smith, you can't spill the beans on this sensitive case you had on the president." So I don't know what this is gonna look like.
Well, and of course, he could say, on the direction of the Department of Justice, the Attorney General has told me that I may not answer that question.
Yes, I like that.
I would love to reveal the evidence we had, but I am under orders to not say anything.
Right.
So
that I like that. I like that possibility. That might work. Well, let's bounce around since we did DOJ. Let's go over to what we're supposed to call the Department of War, which I refuse to do until it's.
Do not do that for me.
Yeah, really. And Mr. Hegseth, Secretary Hegseth, boy, you were General Counsel of the Army. What do you see about the firing of JAG lawyers, the potential for war crimes with boats being blasted out of the Caribbean with seemingly no intel or evidence that they're actually carrying drugs, nor that they're a terrorist organization? There's a lot going on. Women and minorities being denied promotions. What's happening at the Department of Defense?
It is from every angle that you could consider it terrible. First of all, we are not a stronger defense position today because of it. We are wasting munitions so that we will not be able to defend our own country should we be attacked. Mm-hmm. We're almost out of munitions to attack a legitimate target because of this. The Strait of Hormuz is worse off today than it was. We are committing war crimes. There's no question. If you look at what international law is, we are committing war crimes by killing people at sea, because we should be pulling them over and saying, we want to board and search. Mm-hmm. And the best example of this is, the first time there were survivors, they killed them. And there was huge criticism of that being a war crime, and it's very specific in the information that is given to our military, that you cannot kill someone who is a shipwreck. So the second time they didn't kill the two survivors, they took them aboard. That's the right thing to do. But then if there is some crime that they have committed for which you have destroyed their boat and other members of the crew, you bring them to this country and you try them. They sent them back to their home countries because there is no evidence to try them on. There is no proof that there is drugs on any of those boats. Right. So it is murder. Yeah. And the people who are at the highest level, the president, he may not get prosecuted, but the people who are committing murder may be charged with those crimes. And when members of Congress made a video saying you do not have to follow an illegal order, you may not follow. They were stating what the law is and should be praised for it. And service members should be following those rules. So I see us committing war crimes. I see us moving our country backward in terms of culture. One of the things, many things at the Department of Defense, where the military I worked with were phenomenal people, great leaders. I really respected and admired them, are being pushed out because they aren't politically aligned with committing war crimes, for example. And women and minority members are being not promoted and are leaving the service. When Carter was president, women were for the first time we worked with Congress to pass legislation that eliminated the Women's Army Corps and integrated women into the regular Army, which meant that women could become generals. Whereas in the Women's Army Corps, there were only two positions for generals, the head of the Army Corps, Women's Army Corps, and the head of the Nurses Corps. Other than that, there were no generals. A woman couldn't be head of the JAG Corps because that was a regular Army slot. And when you talk about firing JAG officers for giving legitimately good advice, you're also skipping that other JAG officers have been diverted from their duties to do immigration work and to help out in U.S. attorneys' offices, which means they aren't doing the work that needs to be done for the military to give advice to commanding officers so that they do the right thing. So you've diminished the ability to act legally at the Pentagon while forcing people who aren't trained to do the job of immigration, for example, to do immigration work. So it's a really destructive thing. And every time I read about him passing over all the qualified women or minority people eligible for promotion, it makes me sick. And I going back, and this testosterone, really? You won't give testosterone to people who want to transition, and you will force people who are otherwise healthy and normal and do not need extra testosterone, because there's no evidence that that will change your war fighting ability, number one. And number two, there is some evidence that it could actually be harmful to your health. So we're doing things that have no relations. Of course, we have a Secretary of Health, Kennedy, who will also do things that are not good for our health. It's really dangerous. It is so dangerous. I can't believe that we may have to survive another 2 years, even with a Democratic House and Senate, which I believe we can do. But even with that, all that can be done is you can stop him from passing legislation that is bad. You cannot pass good legislation or undo bad legislation. You can stop funding, for example, of the Arc de Trump, which will block the view of the Arlington Cemetery and deface the architecture of Washington, D.C. And block, by the way, there is a women's memorial museum at the entrance to Arlington, which if you haven't visited, it's really inspiring. It has a glass ceiling that is pierced by 2 staircases. It's quite amazing. And it's a beautiful, it's wonderful. A friend of mine, General Wilmot, was the force behind it. I got to know her in the Pentagon, and then she was stationed in Chicago when I moved back to Chicago. So I kept up my friendship with her. And now she's back in Washington, where she has done so much for this museum. Everyone going to Arlington should definitely go to see the Women's Museum. And if you have any female member of the family who served, you can look up their record, all there.
Very cool. I want, so, right. This is a lasting, almost generational impact that Hegseth and Trump are having on our military. You don't take women and minorities off promotion lists and force them out without years of catch up needing to be played.
One story.
Yeah.
I was on a commission in the Obama administration looking at sexual assault in the military. And we had many panels testifying, and one panel was 5 members, 1 admiral, 4 generals. The lowest rank was a brigadier, and the brigadier was the only man on the panel. Every woman outranked him. That's something that could have never happened until we eliminated the Women's Army Corps and integrated women into the military academies and into basic training. So I just want to say that's all being undone now.
Lovely. I've got our viewers. Many of our viewers know that I publish a column through Lincoln Square every Wednesday. So today's Wednesday. Today's column, which I urge people to take a peek at, is on the topic of these I call them the boat blasts, blowing boats out of the water. And I've said for a long time that is not how you take down drug cartels. It simply isn't. But now, Jill, we have the data. The numbers are in from the DEA, from the military, and from police departments and sheriff's departments around the country. And guess what? There is more pure cocaine coming into the country. You'll remember that at first Trump said this is about fentanyl. And of course, most people knew that was absolutely dead wrong. Fentanyl is largely coming through Mexico on land. So it's about cocaine. And many people would say, I'm okay with a few less drug couriers in the world if we're reducing cocaine. Number one, there's no evidence, as you referenced, that these are true criminals in possession of drugs. Number two, the results aren't there. We're seeing the same amount of cocaine being taken off the streets. Experts are telling us the cartels have pivoted to now large ships hugging coastlines instead of little boats. So more cocaine coming in, more pure cocaine coming in. And the first sign that you would be actually having an impact on the amount of cocaine on the streets would be that you would see the price go up, right? Supply and demand. The price is going down for cocaine. And it's more pure and there's more of it. So he has failed. And at any other planet, the Secretary of Defense who was losing in Iran, losing the drug war. And by the way, we had a graphic up the other day, Jill, I sent it to you. It appears that a signal jamming exercise in New Mexico may have contributed to a civilian medevac plane crashing in New Mexico. Any other Secretary of Defense would be fired for this.
I would have not confirmed him, so we could have avoided all this. And there were plenty of reasons not to confirm a Fox News host who had a minor low rank. I mean, imagine you're a general and you're reporting to this low rank person. It's just unconscionable that he got confirmed. But then you can look at almost every member of Trump's cabinet and say, how did they get confirmed? How did any of those people get confirmed? I guess I would have to say Hegseth and Kennedy and Blanche would be, well, Bondi before, are top of the list of people who really shouldn't have been confirmed. And we know now Blanche has a big enough record as the deputy and as acting attorney general that you know what you're getting. Believe it when they say what they're going to do because they're doing it. And yet members of Congress are going to vote for them.
Yeah, I've said repeatedly, based on where I come from, FBI background investigations, overseen many of those through the years for cabinet nominees. I don't know how these people ever sailed through a background investigation. And in many cases, they didn't have one, let alone a national security polygraph exam. But I've often said that the barista in the coffee shop at FBI headquarters would not get a top secret clearance to be in the building if they had backgrounds like Tulsi Gabbard and others, people with known drinking problems, people who sexually harass women. That doesn't get you through a background investigation if you're the coffee person at headquarters.
And you must be awfully proud of Kash Patel.
Well,
I mean, really.
Well, he sued me for defamation and he's lost and now he's appealing. But let's go there. Let's go to the FBI, where we've heard yesterday reports that there's tensions between him and his general counsel at FBI headquarters. Hundreds of lawyers at FBI headquarters who keep the Bureau out of trouble and keep them constitutional. And apparently he wants a lot of them to go away. This sounds a lot like the JAG diminution of JAG officers at the Pentagon. What do you say about cabinet and sub-cabinet level people who think the lawyers can just go home?
Well, it's a shame that we don't care about the legal consequences of our actions, and the statute of limitations exceeds their possible staying in office. If there is a Democratic administration in 2 years, the statute will not have run, and these people should be warned that they may be investigated, and if the evidence is there, indicted and tried. So it's really unwise to get rid of independent legal advice. I mean, when you think about all of the inspectors general and general counsels who, not just at the FBI, throughout the administration, every department's inspector general was fired. Right. And the courts have allowed that to happen. And, you know, the quote, when you played the Blanche comments about, well, the president has the power to do it. Yes, he does have the power to do it. Doesn't mean he should. Doesn't mean it's a good thing. It doesn't mean it serves the rule of law in our country. It does not. And the stuff that is public about Kash Patel, that no one's denying, are things that really should lead any other president to say, you're gone. You have to leave. And yet, here we are. We still have Kash Patel. We still have Todd Blanche. We still have Kennedy. We still,
So I have to ask Jill, particularly with your Watergate experience. Watergate was an attempt at the highest level to hold our nation's leaders accountable. What does accountability look like for you after all of this? And assuming that Trump pardons virtually everybody in his administration and himself, what does accountability look like?
Well, the pardons are troubling because, again, that's an unlimited power that the Constitution grants to the president on the assumption that the president will be a believer in the rule of law and will not be pardoning money launderers and rapists and people who abuse their power in government. But let me just go back to Watergate, because back then I believed that we should indict Richard Nixon while he was the sitting president. We had impeccable evidence of his guilt. We had him in his own words on tapes. We had testimony from John Dean, which was confirmed. Every detail he said was confirmed when we listened to tapes. And he would have been convicted by any reasonable jury. And so if we had done that, I think that there would have been a message sent to future miscreants who might get elected that I better avoid actually violating the law. Yeah. And I think that's what we're seeing at Justice, where Jeanine Pirro may have been told by her staff, I'm not going to go to court to bring that case because I'll get disbarred. And then I'm done forever with my career. Yeah. And the same thing is true, and I also not only thought Nixon should be indicted while he was sitting president, but he resigned and became a private citizen in plenty of time for us to indict him as a citizen. And again, had we done that, and we would have, but our leader, Archibald Cox, had been fired in the Saturday Night Massacre, and Leon Jaworski, who took over, said, no, I think impeachment is the right procedure. And truthfully, back then, impeachment was a bipartisan effort. And it would have worked if he hadn't resigned. So it was a legitimate way for accountability. But in today's world, impeachment is no longer a viable option. We cannot, in the current makeup of Congress, get to an impeachable offense.
Yeah.
That would have impeachment charges and a conviction. So we no longer have that as a backup, and only the criminal courts can give us that kind of accountability and justice. And yes, when Democrats take over, they can remove all the gold, but the money has already been spent. Millions and billions of dollars in gold glued into the White House that make me nauseous to look at.
Sure.
Gold paint on 24 karat gold paint on a statue. Why are we spending money on that when children are starving? When we're taking away SNAP benefits and gilding Washington? And we're spending billions for the extra protection in Washington, D.C., which is absurd waste of money. We should not have the National Guard patrolling D.C. And there are just so many things that are policy-wise and economically.
Well, I hate to shamelessly plug yet another recent column I did on National Guard in D.C., Jill. The numbers are there, too. And guess what? They haven't made a dent in violent crime in D.C. And now we're up to close to 5,000 troops, which have been locked into what, 2029 or something? Yeah. Ridiculous.
Till he's out of office.
Yeah. Which makes you wonder if he thinks he needs troops to stay in office. But I want to, before we go, I've asked this of a couple of lawyers I respect that have come on. Let me ask you your opinion on the Supreme Court and what to do about it. Are you for reforming the court, or is that a slippery slope to something else?
I have mixed feelings on that because, of course, it is a slippery slope. If you take the path of, I'm going to add 3 more justices, and I'm going to only allow that to happen when a Democrat is president. Then when the next Republican comes in, well, we'll increase to 3. And then you get to an unwieldy number of members of the court. If you put term limits on, or age limits, that makes some sense, and it would play out over time. If you create a system where people are appointed because there's term limits, you would have everybody who gets elected president would have some opportunity to appoint new people. That to me makes sense, but it's not going to solve the problem right now because you can't fire people who have been confirmed for life appointments. Right. And unfortunately, we have a very relatively young court. I mean, there's a couple who are old and might be forced out, but they won't be forced out except by age or resignation, or disability, or impeachment, which of course is a legitimate way to deal with some of the corruption and conflicts of interest that are going on at the court. But I think for now, we're kind of stuck with it. And the court, I keep thinking, they're going to wake up and they're going to see what they have empowered. And they're going to very carefully define the immunity that they granted, which only applies technically. Total immunity is for his absolutely constitutionally guaranteed things like granting a pardon. That's immunity. Declaring war, that's immunity. But things like slamming E. Jean Carroll, defaming her, he doesn't have immunity for that. That has nothing to do with his job as president. Right. And yes, giving a press conference and from the White House is part of his job, but not covering something like a personal lawsuit. That's not part of his job. So I think where we are in terms of the Supreme Court is we're locked in for quite a while with a really bad court that is not doing, even those who say, well, I am a textualist. Yeah, except when it says, for a militia, they don't use the word militia when it comes to guns, even though that is the premise for the Second Amendment. They go however they want based on the outcome they want. And that's scary to me. And now, by the way, going to Blanche, he's talking about the Comstock Act being brought back to life. And so there's a lot going on that the courts are allowing, but thank heavens, for the most part, the courts, including Trump-appointed judges, are saying, no, that's not, you can't.
It's true. And it's particularly true on when he attempts to meddle with elections already. It's like 20-0 so far on what he's doing. Why don't, so in our remaining minute or so, and this has been, an enjoyable, wide-ranging discussion, and we need to tap into your knowledge and experience more often. Tell folks where they can follow you, where they can get your book, and what you're working on, if anything.
So the book is called The Watergate Girl, My Fight for Truth and Justice Against a Criminal President. Should have a subtitle saying, not named Trump. Right.
The other criminal president.
The first criminal president. Yeah. And I guess there were others who had corruption, but not actual committing of crimes of obstruction of justice and misuse of power the way that Nixon and Trump have been. I'm on all the social media, everything from, I still am on X, but also on Threads and LinkedIn and Instagram and everywhere else. I have a podcast called #Sisters-in-Law with Barb McQuaid, Joyce Vance, and Kimberly Atkins Storer, where we talk about legal issues, and now a spinoff called Sisters Sidebar, where we answer listeners' questions. 2 of us each week take on additional questions that we don't get to do during the #Sisters-in-Law show. We do in #Sisters Sidebar. Okay. And I do an occasional YouTube show called Just the Facts, where I actually interview people. And I hope you'll come on that show because I've so enjoyed this conversation.
I'd be happy.
I'd like to be asking you the questions.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you can interrogate an FBI agent.
Yes, exactly.
good.
Oh, yeah. And speaking of FBI agents, think about all that internal dialogue that has been revealed because they didn't want to do things that they thought were illegal and that have come out in discovery. It's another one of those examples of be careful what you wish for. You bring a lawsuit and the other side gets discovery.
Yeah.
And then you see that it is a vindictive prosecution and it will be dismissed based on FBI 302s and FBI notes.
And similarly, the Secret Service communications inside the Secret Service on Jim Comey's surveillance, which we're learning involved cell phone tracking and exigent circumstances with no warrant.
Yes.
Wow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, folks. Hey, we have been enjoying Jill Wine-Banks, and I'd encourage you to get her book, Watergate Girl, and to follow her on her social media and YouTube. And who knows, maybe I will indeed have the pleasure of being on with Jill in the future. This has been great, Jill. Thank you. Stay well and keep setting us level with regard to legality and constitutionality.
Thank you for this show. I so enjoyed it, Frank.
Yep.
It was
My
a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks, folks. We are going to see you on Friday with, as you know, Frank Friday. And I'll be as frank as usual. Today's column that's out for the week, Lincoln Square, you can find it on either their accounts or on my Substack account right here. And I cover the numbers not lying about blowing boats out of the water and the shocking data showing that we may have more cocaine, more pure cocaine, and cheaper cocaine than before we started blowing boats out of the water. I'll see you on Friday. Thanks.